All right, so welcome to another deep dive. And today's case, well, it's gonna send chills down your spine, I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We're talking about Heather Pressdee, a nurse, um, convicted of murdering her patients.
Wow.
And we've got a lot to go on. We've got her Wikipedia page, obviously, and a whole bunch of news articles about the investigation and the trial and all that. But one of the things that is really strange about this case is that Pressdee is linked to 17 deaths,
Oh, wow.
but she was only convicted of 3 murders.
Wow. How does that happen?
That's a really good question, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
That is a mystery. It's a real puzzle, and it kind of highlights how tough it can be, in these cases to prove intent, especially when you're dealing with people who are already sick and, in a fragile state of health.
Exactly. So let's start with kind of like a basic background, right? Like who is Heather Pressdee? So born in 1982, went to community college, became a vet tech, and then got her nursing degree. It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? It's almost like this progression.
Yeah, you know what I find really interesting about that? It's the vet tech background.
Hmm.
It kind of makes you wonder if there was something else going on there. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
Like a preoccupation with life and death, maybe even a desire for control over it.
Yeah, I guess the question is, was that a step towards nursing? Or
Right.
was it kind of a window into something darker?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, right? So she worked in five different nursing homes across Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of movement.
5.
That's a classic sign, of a healthcare serial killer. It's
Mm.
not just a one-time thing.
Right.
They move around exploiting trust and invading suspicion.
Right. And her weapon of choice,
Oh,
insulin.
wow.
Lethal doses injected into patients under her care.
Really?
I mean, it's truly horrifying.
It is, it's a complete betrayal of everything that healthcare stands for.
Right.
It really makes you question everything. It's like how do we screen these people? How do we monitor the people who are entrusted with our care?
Yeah, it's terrifying. So let's talk about the victims. Her first 2 confirmed victims, James Bartow, who is 55, and Joseph Campbell, 83, both died in December of 2022, just a few weeks apart.
Wow, that's a really really tight timeline. It kind of suggests a terrifying escalation.
Yeah,
It's like a snowball effect almost. It makes you wonder what was going through her mind at that point.
exactly. And then in May 2023, Nicholas Symbol, only 43, died. It's interesting, isn't it? The age range of her victims.
That's what I was thinking too. Like it wasn't about age, I don't think.
Hmm.
It was about vulnerability. It was about preying on those who are already weak, unable to fight back,
Right.
completely reliant on the very person who was harming them.
Yeah, and her explanation, Pressdee claims she was ending their suffering.
Oh, wow. That's where things get really, really murky. Was it a warped sense of empathy, or was it just a cold, calculated justification for murder? It's unsettling.
It really is. She was finally arrested in May of 2023, and not just for those 3 murders, but for 19 attempted murders.
Oh my gosh. Think about that for a second. 19.
19.
That gives you just a little glimpse into the potential scale of her crimes. It's like looking into an abyss.
To avoid the death penalty, Pressdee pled guilty to all charges, and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms, plus 380 to 760 years. She's currently serving her time at SCI Muncie, so that's the State Correctional Institution at Muncie, a women's prison in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's a harsh sentence, no doubt.
Right.
But does it really reflect the enormity of her crimes? The lives lost, the families shattered. It raises questions about the very nature of justice.
For sure, and it brings us back to, that initial mystery. She's linked to 17 deaths, but only convicted of 3.
Right.
So why?
It all comes down to intent.
Hmm.
Proving that Pressdee knew that her actions would lead to death, not just that she should have known.
Right.
That's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to decipher that from, medical records and witness testimonies, especially when patients are already critically ill.
So it's a legal tightrope walk.
Exactly. And don't forget, prosecutors have to build a rock solid case.
Of course.
They might have chosen to focus on the cases with the most undeniable evidence, just to ensure that conviction. It's a strategic decision,
Hmm.
but it leaves a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance, right? Pursuing justice for some, while acknowledging the potential for more victims out there.
Yeah.
What about those families though? What about those left behind to grapple with this unimaginable loss?
God, I can't even imagine the pain, the betrayal.
Yeah,
I mean, their loved ones were meant to be cared for,
right,
not killed by the very person they trusted.
right.
You know,
And that perhaps is the most haunting aspect of this entire case.
it is. It really makes you wonder about those hidden cracks in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
How could someone like Pressdee operate undetected for so long?
Yeah, and we'll delve more into those questions and explore what can be done to prevent, tragedies like this in the future. But for now, I think we just need to take a moment and really absorb the gravity of this case, the lives lost and the ripples of pain that continue to spread.
I agree.
It's disturbing to think that someone like Presti could work within the healthcare system, preying on the most vulnerable. It makes you wonder, how can we how can we spot those red flags, those warning signs that someone might be abusing their position of power?
Yeah, that's such an important question. And you're right, it's not always easy to spot, but there are some things that, you can look out for.
Oh, okay.
For instance, be wary of a healthcare worker who seems, I don't know, overly eager to administer medications,
Okay.
especially painkillers or sedatives. Now I'm not saying that, every nurse who's pushing pain meds is suspicious,
Right, of course.
but it's one of those things to keep an eye on.
So it's about trusting your instincts, right? Like if something feels off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And another red flag another red flag is a healthcare worker who isolates patients,
Oh, okay.
making it difficult for families to visit, or to communicate with them. Think about it. If you can control access to a patient, it makes it much easier to manipulate and abuse them without anyone noticing.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought. It's about recognizing those subtle power dynamics
Right.
that can be so easily exploited.
Exactly.
What else should we be looking out for?
Well, pay close attention to any unexplained changes in a patient's condition.
Hmm.
Bruising, drowsiness, confusion, a sudden decline. Those could be signs of something more sinister. It's not just about, overt physical abuse,
Right.
but also the subtler forms of neglect or mistreatment.
So it's about being vigilant,
Yeah.
about noticing those small details that might otherwise be dismissed.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
what happens when someone does suspect something is wrong?
Right.
I mean, it could be intimidating, right, to question a healthcare professional, especially when you're not a medical expert yourself.
You're right. You're right. It can feel very daunting. But remember, you are your loved one's advocate.
Hmm.
If you have concerns, don't hesitate to voice them.
Okay.
Start by talking to the patient's doctor or nurse.
Right.
Explain what you've observed and ask for clarification.
Yeah.
Open communication is key.
So what if you're not satisfied with their response though? Or what if you feel like the situation is urgent? What then?
Then you escalate it. Don't be afraid to go to the hospital or nursing home administration.
Mm.
And if you still feel like your concerns aren't being taken seriously, there are external options.
Like what?
Well, you can contact your state's licensing board for nurses, you can file a complaint, you can even reach out to law enforcement if you believe that a crime has been committed.
So it sounds like there's a whole system in place,
Right.
but it's really up to individuals to be proactive
Right.
and to advocate for themselves or for their loved ones.
Exactly. And documentation is crucial.
Okay?
Make a detailed record of everything, dates, times, specific incidents, conversations with staff. It's like building a case file. Just in case, you need to take things further.
So gathering evidence, being organized, and being ready to act.
Yes, exactly.
What about situations where multiple families or patients share similar concerns?
Right. Well, that's where collective action becomes incredibly powerful. Sharing information, supporting each other, and working together can really amplify your voices and put pressure on the system to investigate and to take action.
There's strength in numbers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all have a role to play in patient safety. It's about being vigilant, being informed, and being willing to speak up when something doesn't feel right.
Now zooming out a bit, how has the Presti case impacted the wider conversation about patient safety in healthcare settings? Like, has it led to any tangible changes or the forms?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint specific policy changes to just one case,
Sure.
but there's no doubt that Prestee's crimes sent shockwaves through the healthcare system, particularly nursing homes. It was a stark reminder that evil can lurk even in places meant for care and healing.
Yeah, I can imagine the anxiety it must have caused for families with loved ones in similar facilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. And while it's difficult to directly link, cause and effect, there has been a renewed focus on scrutinizing healthcare workers, tightening medication protocols, increasing oversight of nursing homes. Think of it as a wake-up call,
Right.
forcing the system to examine its vulnerabilities.
It's a grim reminder that we can never be, too careful,
Right.
especially when it comes to the safety of those who are most vulnerable. But what about the challenges of actually detecting and preventing these kinds of crimes? Pressdee operated for a long time
Mm.
before getting caught. So how can we make it harder for someone like her to slip through the cracks?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's something that healthcare professionals and policymakers grapple with constantly.
Hmm.
The biggest challenge is that, those warning signs that we discussed,
Right.
they can also be symptoms of other less nefarious issues.
Oh, so it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Exactly, exactly. Separating genuine medical errors from intentional harm, especially with elderly or critically ill patients. It's a constant struggle. It's rarely black and white, and that's why it's so vital to have robust system for reporting and investigating any suspicious activity.
Okay, so what kind of systems are we talking about here?
Well, hospitals and nursing homes need clear protocols for reporting medication errors, adverse events, any suspected abuse or neglect.
Hmm.
Think of it as a clear chain of command, ensuring that concerns reach the right people
Right.
and are taken seriously.
So establishing a clear path for reporting and then ensuring that those reports are investigated thoroughly.
Precisely. But it goes beyond just procedures.
Okay.
We need a culture of open communication where staff feel safe to raise concerns without fearing retaliation. It's about encouraging people to speak up, to trust their gut instincts.
So creating a space for whistleblowers, essentially?
Yeah, exactly.
What about external oversight? What role do agencies outside the facility play?
Right. Well, healthcare facilities should be proactively working with law enforcement and with regulatory bodies, sharing information, coordinating investigations. It's a collaborative approach to ensuring patient safety.
Makes sense. It sounds like technology could also play a role here too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Electronic health records, medication tracking systems, even surveillance cameras. These tools can provide valuable data and help identify patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. It's about using technology to enhance human oversight,
Right.
to create a safety net that's as tight as possible.
But ultimately, it's not just about systems and technology, is it? It's about people. It's about individual responsibility.
You're absolutely right. Families, visitors, even fellow patients, we all have a role to play. Be observant, ask questions, and if something seems wrong, don't be afraid to report it. It's about creating a collective sense of responsibility for patient well-being.
It's a sobering reminder that even in the most advanced healthcare systems, human error, negligence, even malice are possibilities.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why staying vigilant, staying informed and being willing to advocate for ourselves and our loved ones is so crucial.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
from recognizing red flags to the complexities of preventing these tragedies. So what are your final thoughts as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into the Heather Prestey case?
This case raises so many questions about healthcare, about patient safety, and the ethical considerations surrounding end-of-life care. It's a case that demands our attention, our critical thinking and our willingness to learn from the past to create a safer future.
It's hard not to feel like a knot in your stomach,
Yeah.
talking about Heather Prestey and all these unsettling details of her case. It really makes you question, the very systems that we rely on for care and safety.
I get that. I totally get that. It's understandable to feel that way. These kinds of stories, they shake us to our core because they violate our trust in places and people that should represent compassion and healing, you know?
It makes you wonder, like, what could possibly drive someone to commit these acts? Like, what goes on in the mind of someone who intentionally harms the people that they're supposed to be caring for?
Right. Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the truth is there's no simple answer. There's no one size fits all explanation for what creates a serial killer.
Right.
Especially one who, operates within the healthcare system.
So there's no easy answer. There's no single factor that we can point to and say, aha, that's what caused this.
Exactly, exactly. Human behavior is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And while certain factors, things like a traumatic childhood or personality disorders, they might increase the risk of violence, they don't guarantee it.
Mm.
There's no crystal ball, that tells us who will become a killer.
So in Prestee's case, we may never truly understand what drove her to commit these horrific acts.
That's a very real possibility.
Hmm.
We can analyze the evidence, scrutinize her statements, and try to construct a psychological profile. But sometimes the why remains elusive.
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it?
It is.
Like we naturally want to understand,
We do.
to find a reason that makes sense of something so senseless.
I know. We crave order. We crave logic, especially when faced with something as chaotic and as disturbing as murder. But the reality is sometimes there is no neat explanation. Sometimes evil exists without a clear motive.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It is.
But I guess it's important to acknowledge that we don't always have all the answers.
Absolutely. And it's equally important to remember that focusing solely on the perpetrator
Mm.
can sometimes overshadow the real story, the victims
Right.
and their families.
Of course.
Their pain, their loss, their struggle for justice.
Mm.
That's where our attention should truly lie.
You're so ahead. The focus needs to shift back to those who are harmed, to those left behind, to pick up the pieces. And it makes me think, like, is there anything that we can learn from their experiences? Any common threads that might help us understand how Pressdee was able to operate undetected for so long?
That's a crucial question, and based on the information that we have, it seems like many of Prestee's victims were already in vulnerable positions,
Right.
both physically and mentally. They might have been elderly, they might have been suffering from dementia, or unable to clearly communicate their needs and their concerns.
So they were essentially easy targets for someone like Pressdee.
It's a harsh truth, but yes,
Yeah.
those who are most vulnerable are often the most susceptible to abuse and exploitation, and that's why it's so crucial to have safeguards in place.
So what can we do? I mean, we've talked about, systemic changes, but what about on an individual level? How can we better protect our loved ones who might be in similar situations?
Well, staying connected is absolutely vital.
Mm.
Regular visits, phone calls, video chats, all of these create a sense of presence, a sense of oversight. It shows that you're actively involved, that you're paying attention.
So it's about being, like, actively engaged, not just assuming that everything is fine because they're in a care facility.
Exactly. And it's about empowering our loved ones to speak up if something feels wrong, even if they can't clearly articulate their concerns. Changes in behavior, mood, or physical condition, those should be taken seriously. Don't dismiss those signs.
It goes back to trusting your instincts,
Yes.
right? Even if you can't put your finger on exactly what's wrong, that gut feeling shouldn't be ignored.
Precisely. And if you do have concerns, don't hesitate to advocate for your loved one. Talk to the staff, ask questions, and if necessary, escalate your concerns to management or even outside authority.
Being their voice, being their protector,
I-
especially when they might not be able to do it themselves.
Exactly. And remember, even small acts of kindness, they can make they can make a difference. A kind word, a listening ear, a gentle touch, those all provide comfort and reassurance to those who feel vulnerable and afraid.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive into the Hedda Pressdee case, I'm left with a mix of emotions. Sadness for the victims, anger at the senselessness of her crimes, but also a glimmer of hope.
Hmm.
By shining a light on these dark corners of our world, by learning from tragedies like this, maybe we can create a safer, a more compassionate world for all.
I share that hope. Cases like this, they're a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance.
Yeah.
But they also underscore the power of human connection
Hmm.
and our collective responsibility to protect the most vulnerable among us.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope this deep dive has provided you with some insights and encouraged you to continue exploring these complex issues. Remember, knowledge is power.
Yes, it is.
And by understanding the darkness, we can work together to create a brighter future.